Hello. This is a palate cleanser. This is an attempt at letting you get through the static. My name is Harold Delaney. My microphone is better quality than my HD camcorder, and I'm here to tell you stories and read you poetry. It is Thursday, June 4th, 2020. The world is insane. It is if everything else wasn't as insane outside, I would say that the most insane thing about today is that it is the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. But everything's nuts. And because of that, I think that sometimes we need something. We need poetry, we need positive output, we need something. And I'm not the person to give that. I give that every Friday morning to my kids when I do poetry in the same means, but tonight is Thursday. Tonight is a time where I can be more adult. It's 10 o'clock. It's after everyone else is trying to get through their sleeping patterns. This is for the night owls. This is for the people who will listen to it later. This is for a movement. Now, with that being said, I have some poetry to read you by artists and poets that are wonderful, and I have some by myself. And those will be rather shitty. I have some stories. And I think I'm going to start this not with a story, which is what I thought I would do. But instead, I think I will start with a poem by myself. And then I think the next poem that you hear will be a poem by a man named Robert Clark, who is a wonderful human being and deserves all of the credit in the world. So these two not exactly go together, but they feel weird, if that made sense. To the girl that told me she could not understand, or stand for that matter, the concept that someone could love more than one person at the same time, to that I say, bullshit. I have loved many people at once in my lifetime. I do indeed love people. For example, I love you in the way that your laughter, powerful and strong, then sputtering until it became nothing at all but a sad glance at your shoelaces. I love the photographer as a silent dealer who loves a loudmouth friend. I love the star of the show as winter descends into spring, dragging on until it finally gives way to its death. I love the artist as a rabbit in an open field, in jumps and bounds, but dragged too easily into a fox's maw. I love the smoke in my bed, the smoke that you hated, as a rider grasps onto a bull, several steps away from oblivion and several more before glory. I wish I could have stayed at that crescendo of your laugh, the weight of you always as easy and light. You were a feather in my hand, not yet the boulder on my back. You showed yourself to be broken, but capable of being loved, and I did as a master craftsman spirals gold into shattered poetry. I wanted to make you more beautiful than you could stand. The gaps of you and me filling with brilliant luminescent shining. But you had told me that you would not stay. You had mentioned the men you would have loved to be with, the people you wanted to see, the bodies you wanted to feel. You found ways of pushing me away for them like a cat avoiding affection, and when my head turned to my own interests, you slashed with the same paw you pushed away with. You dug your claws deep and pulled until I couldn't let go of you again, and then you let go to pursue the version of perfection you did not want until that perfection would leave its love for you. I hope perfection finds you perfect. I hope you understand how love changes people. I hope it sees the gold. That's my poem that I wrote a very long time for one very specific person, and I hate writing poetry for people. And I realized that it could matter for anything. Now, this poem, I don't think has a name, but is by a Mr. Robert Clark. And it is, it goes like this. Our passion turned everything around us into ash, never thinking it would consume us too. More like we didn't care. All we wanted was each other, or maybe all I just wanted was you. The memories linger still. A stagnant pool, poisonous and foul, in the desert of my mind, and like a vagrant, thirsty and desperate, I always return for a drink. Now, he is a wonderful poet who does not realize that he is one half the time that he speaks. A story. A quick one. To wet the whistle for what might come later. I was an MC at a poetry night for the better part of a few years. I did it because I loved it. I loved being able to listen to music and talk to people and walk around like I owned the place. I didn't. I just happened to be the guy who was asked to help and still had to pay to help. Still very odd. But one night, we hosted this in Lyndhurst. And the Lyndhurst Goes Out crew, maybe that's the name that they choose. They felt like they were people who would yell at you for having too many lawn gnomes on your lawn, or that your grass was too high. They felt like those people. Probably a group of 4 women, 5. The main one, the woman who was leading the bunch, the highest of Karens, she didn't have a cell phone to call her husband, so she instead would use the bar phone. Throughout this time frame, she was very indignant towards anyone that was there, and she would openly yell about how she didn't need alcohol to have fun. Mind you, this was a bar. So for the rest of us, we were kind of annoyed at her. And we went through the sets as standard, as much as we could. A few people had not shown up to that event, so I think we put John Mads, a comedian out of Colorado now, on first. And he gets a bit raunchy, in his own way. Mostly self-deprecating jokes that are wonderful, honestly. He's an amazing comedian. If you can, go and watch his set. And they started actively booing and going against him. And we couldn't stand for that, me and the guy who ran the place, his name Mark Shibuya. We couldn't stand that, so we just kind of let them go. We just kind of let it be. Mads eventually went back at them, doing so in a way that made us all laugh. And then Gia Grillo, who is a poet who I might be reading today, she went up on stage and did her poems. And she did a few that did not work that well for them, which is fine. I'm currently looking at my phone to see if she has responded to my text, which she hasn't. They weren't responding that well to some of her poetry. And she decided, well, if you didn't like those, you're really not going to like this one. And she did the most logical thing and said, this is a poem called Divine. A poem that Gia had read numerous times at the poetry nights. That I love. And that I consistently forget the first line to. And then it spawns into my brain as soon as it's off of my tongue. But all of the women went, "Oh, that's wonderful. That's great." And then she leads with the line, I believe it goes, "It never mattered to me the time Divine ate dog shit." And you felt the four women just deflate. They're like, "Oh, this is the worst." And they continued to be belligerent and mean until eventually Mr. Marchabunya decided it was time to do some karaoke. And that karaoke that he chose was The 1st of May by Jonathan Coulton. The 1st of May, if you're not aware, the chorus begins, "The 1st of May, the 1st of May, outdoor fucking starts today." And as he sung it, they stood up and left. And from that moment of that night on, we all realized that we needed to do this for us. And that's where I'm going to lead directly into our next poem, which is by a person named Nicholas Hornyak. It is Things to Do Once We Get Out of Isolation. And here's how it goes. A meal. Not a sit-down restaurant. It would be too soon. Take a brown paper bag, all you can afford, and grass will be the table. It may be warm or maybe leaves. Catch a movie. It's not the film, but the spectacle. You're better off 6 feet from your neighbor than the surface world or television screens. Go for Doctor Strange after America pieced out. Hug harder. Ask for permission, of course. Like you, they forgot what touch is supposed to feel like without nitrile in the way. Never let anybody think they belong off-grid again. Return to work. Reevaluate who kept you going and who let you go. Accept no excuses. They're just permission slips you accidentally tore back in elementary. Take whatever comes. Search for better. Live, thrive, survive. At the beginning of April, actually throughout the entire month of April, a bunch of friends and I started writing a bunch of poems. And when we started writing that bunch of poems, the first 2 that I wrote were the only 2 that I officially wrote during the month of April. Supposed to write a poem every day, and I completely just fucked off and forgot. So, this is the place that I was in at the beginning of April. Dan Campbell said December's got him up against the ropes, and he doesn't know how to get loose. For me, it's March. Days are never-ending, nights are sparse and losing ground. Most years, March lasts for most of April and May. Now it may last to June. The great days of celebration strangled tight. I'll kick the feeling back in my toes soon enough, but rebirth feels hitched to redistribution, and there's no flowers to throw. The second poem that I wrote of this was really more of a direction of feeling like I was trying to grasp at a golden ring, and I couldn't. And every time I read this poem, it sounds more like don't know what type of thing I'm grasping for. Golden ring, noose. You're the judge. It's from April 2nd. The rope is there. I can see it. It dangles in the distance in a way that invites the thought of it in a changing fire. Every grasp at it is a lost thread. The rope is there. I find myself looming even further in the distance, far above or across. The distance doesn't matter. Up is parallel to progress. They stand at the other end, waiting for the changes to come, waiting for my hand to grasp the rope, waiting for the strands to hold me. The rope is there, and I have climbed so many already. Behind me span so many ropes, so many ladders, so many stopping points, so many changes. There is a sanctum of lost knowledge and fates. But for me, there is only the one ahead. To strive and keep going. And the rope is still there. That is the last poem of mine that I'm going to read today for you. I am going directly into my last two poems. And I think they are wonderful. And I think that they don't need any understanding to combine the two, but I think you'll get what I'm trying to get at. This is a poem by Gia Grillo. Tinkerbell was a mean-spirited bitch. Fairies being too small to hold more than one emotion at a time, she held tight as the grave to any bad one. She was all id, was all tantrum, all fight, all fluster, and all fevered. Childish pout that said, "I will die if you don't applaud." She was jealous, ill-tempered, spoiled, vindictive, went after Wendy with scissors and pins for a boy so ungrateful he forgot her completely a year after she died. And may he plummet into the sea for that sin, fairyless forever. That's what fairy dust is. That's what fairy dust is, a chemical reaction. Anger and rage. Every negative in concentrate. When mixed with the positive of all those happy thoughts, is what lifts your feet from the ground. The last poem is by a poet named Dylan Thomas. Do not go gently into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men, at their end know dark is right, their frail deeds, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gently into that good night. No! Did I mess this entire poem up? Nope, I'm good. But now I've messed it up by saying that. Sometimes we don't edit things, and we just put them up live. And we make people laugh by messing up a poem hysterically. Getting all serious and messing it up. Because I feel like I didn't mention why I'm reading this poem. And I feel like I shouldn't need to mention why I'm reading this poem. This is by Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, carrying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in the green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late they grieved in it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men, near death, who see with blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on sad height. Curse, bless Me now with your fierce tears I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. So, this is Thursday night. This is poetry with Mr. Delaney. No, I'm not doing poetry with Mr. Delaney. I'm not. I'm Harold Delaney now. Haha, fuckers, you're stuck with me. I'm Harold Delaney. Tomorrow morning I will do a positive, happy-go-lucky one for my kids. But for right now, thank you for listening. I didn't set up to stop the actual recording, so you're going to have this for a little bit. There was a nice peace out moment, but bye, guys.